I just ran into that.
I'll just leave it there.
Oh no!
Out of here!
Oh my god!
Oh! Oh! No! 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 That was a pretty good one. Usually whenever I do that, it's not... I don't get much, but you... Yeah, every time. Every single time. Me, I guess it's where my hands are just so beat up already. You know, it's like literally like if you can't tell, I have a boxer's fracture right here where this knuckle looks like it just doesn't exist. It's actually like sunk down in on my hand, and it's from me doing something very stupid.
I just always think about Chance telling me that I need to do that if I'm ever about to get in a fight with somebody.
Yeah.
Because he said that even him knowing how to fight someone, if he was about to fight somebody and they did that with their knuckles, he'd be kind of like, uh-oh.
Like me, if I'm ever about to get in a fight with somebody, I would just be like, can I stretch for just a second? Okay. And I do like the dragon stretch where I can get like really low with my legs. And they'll be like, you ain't supposed to be able to do... And then all of a sudden I'll get them I'll do a few like leg exercises, get them thinking about my feet, and then like when we start to get in the fight, I'm just gonna like gesture with my leg like whoop, 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 just like get them psyched out with my legs, and then just like give them a straight right to the nose.
It's like the whole fucking like
yeah, the bolo punch.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it about Angelo Dundee's fighters doing that? Because it was Muhammad Ali who did it. I don't think Ali actually ever did it. He did the wind up, but I don't think he ever did the fake out. It was it's Sugar Ray Leonard who did it. He did it to Roberto Duran in like their second fight, because he was actually winning the fight. He does the wind up. He's like, here it comes, boom, and it was perfect. And then of course Apollo Creed did it in the Rocky movies, and there you go.
I think if I was an MMA fighter, I would probably consider trying that at some point. Just doing the whole but then coming up with a fucking kick to the side of the head on the other side from where I'm doing that with my hand.
Actually, Stephen Thompson, he has what he calls the money combo. Does a basic 1-2, like pawing jab, overhand right. He does that about 2 or 3 times, and he gets them to guard up top for that overhand right. But what he does is he actually paws at the jab, throws, and he throws a kick behind this punch, and just catches him almost every time. He did that to one guy, Dan Stitchin. It was Steven's first fight in the UFC, and it was
a way off topic intro for what we're watching. I think we're just trying to distract ourselves from the creepiness of this video's title.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Does that combo a few times, and then just boom, dude's out before he even hits the ground.
From getting hit in the liver, I'm guessing.
No. Head kick. He got hit in the jaw perfectly.
It's so fast, I couldn't tell exactly where he kicked him.
Thompson's fast, dude. Thompson's there's just people who are built different, man. You know who else is built different? Mr. Ballin. How else are we ever gonna receive, stories about the strange, dark, and mysterious on YouTube? Let's go ahead and get into it. This is the Chinese government has confirmed the paranormal, plus our huge announcement.
Hey everybody, real quick, I don't normally make announcements at the beginning of stories, but today is different because I have a massive announcement. Starting right now, today, the Mr. Ballin podcast that rose immediately to the top of the charts when we launched it in 2022 and then was scooped up by Amazon by the end of the year. Yeah, that show is now available on all podcast platforms, and it is free. Now, don't worry if you've been listening
to the year of exclusivity.
Well, as soon as I get my Spotify back up eventually, then I'll have to go listen to all of this podcast.
Well, here's what I'll say. Joe Rogan, since Joe Rogan's deal with Spotify ran out, but now he's posting back on YouTube again, which I think that's pretty cool. Because That's the thing. Is like Joe Rogan's podcast has such a huge audience that it can, like, he can do that. And John Ballin, I mean, Mr. Ballin here, he's basically got the same way. I mean, he's basically just cultivated himself an audience to where he can do that now. He's not beholden to one platform. He can literally be on any platform he wants. That's what's needed. That's what I like. I like it when, don't get me wrong, I understand exclusivity deals for an X amount of time, but you need to have it to where eventually you can be on every platform so that anyone and every one of your fans can enjoy your stuff. But anyway, sorry.
This podcast on Amazon Music, that's awesome. You can keep doing that because with your Prime membership, you will get Mr. Ballin podcast episodes 1 month earlier than everybody else, and it will be ad-free. But again, the show is on every other platform right now, and it really is free. So go ahead and follow the Mr. Ballin podcast, Strange, Dark, and Mysterious Stories on Amazon Music or wherever else you get your podcasts.
Well, you heard him, ladies and gentlemen.
Today's story is about one of the most famous, potentially paranormal events of all time, except almost no Westerners have heard of it because it happened in China. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the Strange, Dark, and Mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please put the like button stapler in Jello. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
To be honest, that's one of the least brutal things I think he's told us to do. The like button.
That's more an annoyance than like something brutal. But
it's
hey,
not like it would be hard to get back out.
Late on the evening of July 27th.
Well, no, you'd eat the Jello. Hell, I'd eat the Jello.
It just depends on if I needed the stapler like right away or not, you know.
True.
If I need it right away, I'm just gonna have to, you know, fuck up the Jello.
1977, a 21-year-old farmer named Huang Yanqiu walked down a wide, dusty road in the little farming village of Beigao, located in northern China. It had been a very hard day on the rice farm where Huang worked because they were all preparing for the autumn harvest. But even though Huang was totally exhausted and worn down, as he walked down this road, he was whistling an upbeat tune. Because for the first time in a long time, Huang was actually excited about the future. Huang had grown up in a poor family, and he hadn't even finished elementary school. He still lived with his parents in a tiny house, and basically every day of his life was the same. He got up at sunrise, he walked to work, he worked all day until he barely could even stand, and then he would walk home and he would go to bed. But the reason Huang was now feeling kind of excited about his future was because he had just gotten engaged to a beautiful girl in a neighboring village, and their plan was to get married after the autumn harvest. Huang was already hard at work, literally building them a house that they could move into after they got married. And in fact, on this particular night, that was where Huang was going. He was going to the property where he was in the middle of building this house, and he was going there not to work on the house anymore, but really just to admire his property. Because again, he was just so excited about the future. Huang turned the corner, and his beautiful, half-constructed home came into focus. The foundation, the walls, and the ceiling were all complete. All he had left to do was put in the windows and the doors. And so Huang walked up and ran his hand over the beautiful brick he had laid around the outside of the property. Brick was not cheap. He had worked extra hours to afford this brick. And so he was just so proud of it, and he ran his hand over it. And then he kind of stepped back and kind of imagined the house when it was all done. And then when he felt satisfied that he had seen enough, he just kind of nodded and turned and just continued walking back towards his home, his parents' home, which was only a few minutes away. When Huang got to his home, he went inside, and his mom already had a meal made for him. It was just some rice and veggies. And so Huang sat down and began eating, and then his parents came over, and they began chatting. And then, of course, the conversation shifted to Huang's upcoming marriage, because that's basically all Huang ever wanted to talk about. And then by about 10 p.m., Huang was so tired that he crawled into his bed, and he fell asleep almost immediately. The next morning, when Huang's parents woke up, they discovered that Huang was not in his bed. Now, this was not totally unusual because they knew their son was a really hard worker, and it wasn't unusual for him to wake up really, really early to head out to the farm to begin his workday. But a little while later, the workers at the rice farm where Huang worked, they saw Huang had not come to work. And because that was so out of character for him, one of the workers actually walked to Huang's parents' home to see if he was okay. And when Huang's mother found out her son had not shown up to work, she was really worried, but she told this worker, oh, my son must have gone to the house he's building, go over there and see if he's there. But the worker from the rice farm went to Huang's property he was building, and nobody was there. And so when he came back and told Huang's mother, this sent her into a total panic, because really for her, this was like completely out of character for her son. He would never miss work. He would never just disappear like this. Something was wrong. So Huang's mother sent this rice farm worker.
You see, my mom would be the same way. Like, if my mom didn't hear from me within a day, because that's the thing, my mom tries to contact me, call me at least once a day, message me once a day, make sure I'm okay. If my mom didn't hear from me for one day, or like any during the day, and like no one knew where I was, if she called you, she called Kate, she called everybody, and she didn't know where I was, like immediately just panic. She would just like full on police investigation, and just, she wouldn't care. She would literally just be like, I need to know where my son is. And I remembered one time my phone was dead, and I was basically on a trip, and I didn't have a charger, and no one knew where I was for like at least 2 hours, because I didn't really have the money to buy one of those like big expensive cables at gas station. That's the thing, gas station cables are friggin' ridiculous. They're like $20 a pop, and they can charge that because they know people are desperate enough to buy them. But I wasn't going to buy one. Immediately, like, as soon as I get home and I plug my phone up, my phone turns on. Ba-ding, 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 ding, 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 ba-ding, ding, ding. I'm like, what the hell? And I looked at, I just received like 10 messages from my mom, be like, hey, I need to talk to you. Hey, where are you at? Nate, where are you? Nate, I've tried to call you. Where are you? And I had 2 voicemails from her. I was like, Jesus, hold on. Called her up. I was like, Mom, what's wrong? And she was just like, it wasn't anything serious. Rylan just wanted to know this about getting a guitar and all that. I'm like, Mom, dear God, I thought like someone died. I was like, and she's like, I'm sorry. And that's always the thing. My mom always calls me up because she trusts my judgment. She just likes hearing from me. You ever, like, do you think your parents are ever gonna?
I mean, they call me if they have a question about something, but they're not like that. Like, if Mom sends me a text and I don't answer for like over a day, she might kind of be like, hey, I tried to text you yesterday, are you okay? Like, she might call me or something,
Yeah.
But to be honest, my mom doesn't actually seem to worry that bad about me, I guess.
Well, I guess it's just one of those things.
Surprising, because she always used to act more worried about me when I lived with her, but now that I live with you all, I guess she trusts y'all to
look
out for me and stuff or something.
Oh, we always got your back. You know how it is.
To go find her husband and tell him what was going on with Huang, and then in the meantime, Huang's mother just walked outside and began going door to door, asking neighbors if they knew where her son was and if they wouldn't mind coming out and helping her look. Now, at this time, the village of Beigao was a relatively small place where all the residents more or less knew each other. And so it did not take long for the news of Huang being missing to spread all across Beigao, and the community really came out in force to go look for him. And so by the afternoon, there were people on bikes riding all around, calling out for Huang. People were going to neighboring villages to see if he was there. Another group of villagers went to Huang's fiance's home and they spoke to her, and she had no idea where Huang was. And so by about the early afternoon, when so many people couldn't find any leads to where Huang had gone, it became clear that really nobody had a clue what happened to him. Now, Beigao at the time was incredibly isolated. This is a small town where most of the people who live there don't have phones, they don't have cars, they ride their bikes everywhere, and there were no roads that connected Beigao to any other place. Now, there was a paved road that went through Beigao, but it actually just came to an end on the outskirts of Beigao. So there was just no way to go to other places, at least not efficiently. Basically, if you lived in Beigao at the time, there was a finite number of places you could go. And all these people that had gone out looking for Huang had searched all of those places, and Huang just was not there. And they discovered his bike was still leaning up against his parents' house, and his work clothes, which he wore basically every single day, were still folded up neatly inside of his room. And so wherever
disappeared
Huang
out of
was,
his bed.
he was on.
Basically, yeah, that seems to be the gist of it. Is just he just disappeared into the ether, never to be seen. Aliens. It's never not going to be funny. It's just like
It's one of those things that was overused for a while, but it became classic enough to be used again occasionally, in my opinion.
Aliens. Instead, for me, it's either aliens or that classic clip from Casper the Friendly Ghost. That's what I imagine.
Foot, and he was still in his pajamas. That night, Huang's parents would contact the village committee, which was basically like the governing body for Beigao, and the village committee decided that this was serious enough, because again, they're thinking, this is impossible, where is this guy, that they decided to contact the police. But when the police got this call, they did not launch an investigation right away because they had limited resources and there was no sign of foul play here. It was very weird that Huang was missing, but he was an adult, and if he wanted to go vanish somewhere, it was kind of like, okay, you know, you're an adult, you can do that. And so Huang's family and the rest of the Beigao villagers were forced to just kind of wait. And
that's a little unusual for China, isn't it?
What, people disappearing?
No, people being allowed to do what they want.
Well, this is rural China. Rural China is a little different than like metropolitan China. Metropolitan China, it's fuck you, obey the law. Rural China, it's just like, obey the law if you can, but don't organize or we'll burn your villages down.
Just don't bring your shenanigans close to our cities.
Well,
basically, I guess.
Well, no, they don't want them to organize and they don't want them to rebel because they need one, they need their rice. They need their population working, and thus being happy. Look, again, I don't have a problem with the Chinese people. I love China. I love its culture. I love the architecture. I love the fashion. I just have a problem with their government, much like I have a problem with my government. I just have a problem with government bodies.
Most governments.
Yeah, I have a problem with most government bodies overruling everybody and making everybody's lives miserable. The only country that I think does it okay is Singapore. And it's because their government, for a lot of things, for what I believe most things, are very hands-off. They're all about, like, entrepreneurship. They're all about, like, independent business owners, you know, low tax rates and all that. I love Singapore. And apparently so did Jet Li, because he told the Chinese government to just stuff it. I'm moving to Singapore. What?
I couldn't remember. I mix up certain country names sometimes. So I was trying to remember if Singapore was the country that actually just made every drug legal, but that's Portugal.
No, Portugal, like that's Europe. Portugal's in Europe. But yeah, Portugal, they're pulling the Oregon thing, and here's the problem with that. Oregon realized their mistake a couple years later, and they reinstituted like making some things illegal. Specifically fentanyl and like the more hard drugs. Especially if it results in people like stealing and just pure chaos.
And see if Huang came back. But over the next few days, Huang did not come back, and there was still no new information about what might have happened to him. Early on the morning of August 5th, so 8 days after Huang went missing, and still by this point there's no sign of him, the deputy director of the Beigao Village Committee came running up the road to Huang's parents' house and knocked on the door. When the door opened up, it was Huang's father, and the deputy director handed him a telegram he had just gotten and said, "Read it." And so Huang's father took the telegram and began reading it, and as he did, his eyes went wide, and then when he was done, he looked up and he was just so confused. Last weekend, I asked old Sega!
Just did an anime cliffhanger
What
on
do you
us,
want to
John, what the hell?
He's been doing that. He's been doing that more and more. I noticed it with some of the more recent ones that we were watching of his.
I've noticed him doing the little ads in the middle of the videos, but I've never noticed it like cutting at such like a oh my god, what's happening moment, you know?
Yeah.
Back on for our Super Bowl 58 watch party. And he said without hesitation, Papa, voglio mangiare vari molluschi esotici. Which of course in Italian means, Papa, I just want to eat various exotic mollusks. And so I said, that's just bully. And immediately I booked us a trip to Alaska. We hopped on a fishing boat, and off we went to snatch up a few of those slippery beasts. But unfortunately, about 15 hours into our seafaring voyage, Lung and I realized we had a problem. Our boat captain was not a boat captain. He was just a simple, blind kangaroo with vertigo who happened to jump on board before we left, and we just didn't notice. We tried to take the wheel from the Roo, but he was so strong that he drove us directly into a storm, and before long a rogue wave came and capsized the vessel. But luckily me and old Sika Lung, we lived, and we swam to a nearby island. And when we stepped foot on land, immediately a horde of angry coconut crabs came out of the brush, skittering around, wielding their machetes, wielding...
Bless you. Bless you.
I'm
Bless you
allergic
3
to
times.
this craziness, man.
I know, right? Mr. Ballin's like weaving quite the tale. I was gonna say, like,
I'd love to know how he comes up with this crap.
he probably like asks his kids, and they like go on these big fantastical things, and he's just like, "Oh, that's
Either
good."
that or this is how he weaves together crazy stories for his kids when he tells his kids stories or something.
Probably. Also, the ship capsizing, that reminds me of one of my favorite all-time jokes. The Magician and the Parrot. You ever heard it?
I can't remember.
Okay, so I'll tell it real quick. It's a really quick one. So there's this magician who's on a ship, and he does the same tricks for a bunch of people because his audience is never the same, so he never has to change up his act. And meanwhile, there's a parrot that is that belongs to one of the chefs. So the parrot sits on the side of the stage, and the parrot basically learned what the act was and started shouting out like what the punchline or what the reveal was. Just like the song the woman has, like, "Rap, there's 2 women in there, rap." And he's just like, "You little shit." And then he's just like, I was like, "And now I will make this woman float." Rap. Like, "Rap, there's a lift underneath her." Rap. God dang it. And then eventually, like, he does this. It happens so often that his act starts to just like literally falter, and then all of a sudden they're hit by a rogue wave. Boom! The ship is just turned over. The magician makes it outside, and everyone on the ship dies except for the magician. He's there, sitting there, floating on a board, and to his surprise, the parrot sits there on the board with him, and the parrot and the magician just looking back and forth at each other. And the parrot just goes, "All right, I give up. How'd you do it?"
Make the ship disappear.
Exactly.
their machetes. Me and old Lung turned to run. But there was nowhere to go. It was just the ocean. And so standing there waiting for death, me and Lung did the only thing we could think to do. We signed up for DraftKings. Now, did that save us from the machete-wielding coconut crabs? No! But did it get us jacked up about Super Bowl 58? Yes, it did. And so once again, this year, we are partnering up with DraftKings to make sure all you fans of the strange, dark, and mysterious out there get access to the very best deals on their platform. And for Super Bowl 58, they got a really good deal. For all customers, there is a bet one, get one, which means you get a bonus bet back to you in the amount of your original wager just for placing a bet. Pretty good. And there are loads of other amazing opportunities for Super Bowl 58 on DraftKings, so go check it out now. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. New customers use promo code MrBallin, bet $5 on any wager, and you'll receive $200 in bonus bets instantly. Again, that's promo code MrBallin, only at DraftKings Sportsbook.
I remember when before DraftKings, Countermove was the like betting app for like MMA fights, and then Countermove got bought up by DraftKings, and now everything's DraftKings. I'm just like, damn. I miss those old Countermove apps or Countermove like ads because they were pretty damn funny.
The telegram had been sent 8 days earlier at around 9 a.m. on July 28th. So basically right around the time that Huang's family discovered Huang was missing was when this telegram was sent. But for whatever reason, the telegram had been very delayed, and so they were just receiving this telegram now, 8 days later. And the contents of this telegram made no sense. It said that just 9 hours after Huang had fallen asleep in his parents' home, he was discovered lying on the sidewalk in the middle of this bustling city called Nanjing, located 600 miles to the south of Beigao.
Wait a minute,
now,
what?
The reason Huang's father and the deputy...
Whoa. That's impossible. That's literally impossible.
I think that's the point.
How the fuck?
Director were so confused by this
freaking
telegram
teleported.
This was impossible. Remember, Huan does not have a car, so the only way he could get around was on foot or on his bike, and we know he left his bike by his house, so he's on foot and very likely in his pajamas.
Dude, even if you had a car, like...
Yeah.
Let's see, like the calculation on
9 hours. Keep in mind, 9 hours, 600 miles.
If you could maintain 60 miles an hour the entire 9 hours, which is basically impossible because traffic and, you know, roads that are lower than
roads
60,
that don't exist.
like, you could almost make it.
I mean, unless someone came to him.
You'd have to be going 65 for 9 hours straight, basically, to make it.
Yeah, and even then,
that far away.
Yeah, even then, that's damn near impossible.
Goes 600 miles. I mean, even if he walked the 30 miles to the nearest train station,
You would have to haul
9
ass, like,
Yeah.
for a lot of the trip.
hours, because that's how much time it took from falling asleep to being discovered in the city, is not enough time to go the remaining 570 miles to Nanjing. So Huang's father and the deputy director, they talked about this, and they both decided that, you know, this just can't be true. Clearly, somebody has mistaken some other person for Huang, because he cannot possibly be all the way in Nanjing. Now, this telegram said that Huang was being held in a deportation center in Shanghai, and so Huang's father and the deputy director decided they would send a telegram back to the sender at this deportation center and tell them, hey, if this really is Huang, he should have a very specific birthmark on his wrist. And so when they sent this telegram off, they fully expected to get one back that said, oh, our mistake, you know, it wasn't him. But they got a reply relatively quickly, and it said, oh yeah, he's got that exact birthmark. It's definitely Huang, but he's very confused. He doesn't really know what's going on. And so somebody from your village has to go get him. Huang arrived back home in the middle of August, so about 2 weeks after he had gone missing. And as soon as he got there, his fiance and his parents were so happy to see him, and pretty soon a steady stream of friends and neighbors and other family members began coming to Huang's house to talk to him, to hear his story, to hear about what happened. But Huang really didn't understand what had happened to him, and so mostly he just didn't answer any questions he got asked. He just kind of kept his head down and just kept saying, you know, I don't know what happened. And then really when his family pressed him and said, you know, like, you got to tell us, you know, this is so crazy, what happened? He would say, look, like, I'm going to tell you what happened, but I don't even know if I can believe the things I'm going to tell you. And so Huang would say, you know, all he could remember was he went to bed in his own bed in Beigao. And then the next morning he woke up and he was laying on the sidewalk, and when he opened his eyes, he saw there was this big swimming pool, and then near it was a sign that said Nanjing, and so that was how he put together that he was in Nanjing. And then almost immediately, these two police officers wearing all white just kind of appeared out of nowhere, and they walked up to Huang, they scooped him up, and without really saying anything to him, they brought him to that deportation center in Shanghai, which is a place where people who seem confused or mentally ill would be sent in order to help them get home. And that was it. That was Huang's entire story, that he just basically woke up in Nanjing with no idea how he got there. And so after he told his family, they all just kind of looked at him like, really? Like, that's what happened? That makes no sense. But Huang, I mean, he was completely lucid. He was explaining it really specifically and really simply. I mean, he looked and sounded exactly like he normally did, and he seemed very honest as he was telling the story. Over the next few weeks, Huang kind of reintegrated back into his life, but things just were not the same. People were now scared of him. I mean, kids literally ran away from him when they saw him because rumors were going around town that he himself, his body, was haunted or something. And so kids were scared of him, and other villagers would openly gossip about him right in front of him. I mean, even his beloved fiance admitted to feeling really uncomfortable around him now. And while all of this was obviously very upsetting for Huang, he did also understand why people were acting this way. I mean, this is a very anomalous thing that's happened to him, and he did not have a good explanation for this totally insane event that he was a part of. And so he just kind of got it. And in fact, Huang himself was kind of terrified of himself. I mean, at night when he would go to bed, he would be terrified that the second he closed his eyes, he was going to be transported hundreds or thousands of miles away to some totally unknown place, and maybe this time he wouldn't even be able to get back again. But as the days wore on, Huang continued to wake up in his own bed in Beigao, which over time kind of made him feel more secure that whatever happened to him was a one-time thing and it's not going to happen again. However, Huang would be wrong. On September 8th, 1977, so 3 weeks after Huang had returned back home, he went to sleep in his bed in the village of Beigao, but when he woke up the next morning, he was not there. The first thing Huang noticed when he woke up that morning were the sounds around him were totally different. They were not right. Normally, when he was asleep in his home, he would hear the sound of his mother and father snoring right by him, and he might hear some insects or birds out his window. And those sounds were gone. Instead, he heard what sounded like footsteps, but not ordinary footsteps. They were footsteps of somebody walking on cement who was wearing high heels, like a clicking sound. And then Huang also became aware of the fact that his face was clearly pressed up against cement. He was laying on the ground. But Huang couldn't open his eyes. As hard as he tried, he couldn't do it. He couldn't move his body. And so he's just laying there on cement with his eyes closed, listening to the sound of these footsteps, these high heels, getting closer and closer and closer. And as they did, his anxiety was growing and growing. He had no idea who this person was. And then these footsteps, they got right up to him and then passed by him. And Huang felt the breeze as this person walked right past him. And then after this person in high heels had kind of walked off in the other direction, Huang finally was able to wrench open his eyes, and he sat up and he looked around, and one, he couldn't find anybody. It was totally abandoned all around him. So whoever had those high heels on had somehow vanished in plain sight. And then also, as Huang continued to look around him, it looked like he was in the middle of this city. But again, there's nobody out there. It's like this abandoned city street. All he had in front of him was this clock up on a building that said 1 a.m. And so pretty soon, Huang was just kind of walking in circles, screaming out for help. And right when he was about to just start sprinting in any one direction in hope that help would be somewhere out there, Huang felt a tap on his shoulder. And then the person tapping him from behind him said, "Are you Huang Yanqiu?" Huang spun around and he saw there were these two men in military uniforms standing there, and for a second, Huang felt relieved. Somebody was here to help him. But then he thought to himself, how do they know my name? What's going on here? And so he asked them, how do you know my name? But the two men didn't answer Huang. Instead, they told him that he was at a Shanghai railway station 700 miles from Beigao, and that they, these two soldiers, were here to take Huang to a nearby army base. At this point, Huang was so scared, he just didn't know what to do. So he just wound up going with these two soldiers who put him in the back of a Jeep. And then they hopped in and began driving, and they drove him out of this weird abandoned city where he had woken up. And after driving for some time, they arrived at this huge army base that had all these rows of fencing around it with razor wire on top and all these sentries that guarded all the doors. And these two soldiers brought him through several of these checkpoints. And then when they reached the very last one, they stopped the car, they got out, Huang got out too, and the two soldiers that were with him grabbed Huang's shoulders, and they basically led him through the last checkpoint, which was manned by armed guards. And as Huang was led through this gate, the armed guards seemed to not even notice the soldiers or Huang. It was like they were invisible to the armed guards. But either way, they got through the final checkpoint, and then the two soldiers that were carrying Huang led him to this kind of nondescript big building, and they opened up a door, and they began walking down this long hallway that kind of zigged and zagged. It was like a maze of different directions you could go. And then finally, they brought Huang right to this big door that said Division Headquarters over it. And then before Huang could say anything, one of the two soldiers that was with him knocked on the door, and then before anybody could respond, that same soldier reached down, opened it up, swung the door in, and then they pushed Huang inside, and they stepped in after him and shut the door behind them. In front of Huang was this big desk, and sitting behind this desk was a very senior-looking military official wearing a uniform. And this official, when they looked up and saw Huang standing there, they got up to their feet and put their hands on their gun and said, "What are you doing here? How'd you get in here?" And Huang, sensing there was something wrong, threw his hands up to show he was not a threat, and pointed behind him and said, "They brought me here." And the military official, who still had his hand on his gun, looked behind Huang and said, "Who brought you here?" And Huang, he turned around and he saw the two soldiers who had picked him up and driven him here and led him to this room. They were gone, which was impossible because Huang would have heard them leave. He didn't hear anything. The door never opened. They just somehow were gone. A second later,
sounds like he's having a bad dream on this one.
It sounds like it, but at the same time, it's just like, if there's official documentation of these things, of this shit happening,
and him
but
just showing up in this dude's office out of nowhere.
Yeah, and then Huang is just like, I don't know how I got here. I don't know what's going on.
Official had pulled out his radio and he was screaming commands, and then another second later, armed soldiers came running into the room. They grabbed Huang, who still had his hands up. They came in, they arrested Huang, and they began asking him all these questions about how he got in here. How did you get through the guards? Did you climb the fence? Did you cut the fence? How did you get in here? It's not possible that you are here right now. But Huang did not have any answers. All he could say was, "The two soldiers, they brought me here." A couple of days later, Huang would be bussed back to Beigao, and again, his friends and family and everybody in town had all these questions about what happened, but again, Huang just had no answers. And then just 11 days after coming back home the second time, Huang would disappear again. And this time he would tell people he encountered two men who told him they were the same two men from the other two times he had gone missing. You had the first instance where he woke up and two police officers in white picked him up off the ground and brought him to the deportation center. And then the second time was the military base where you had those two soldiers who brought him through the gates and brought him to division headquarters. Basically, these two men he encountered on the third trip were saying they were the same men across all three instances. And on this third instance that he went missing, Huang said these two men put him on their backs and they flew him to 9 different cities around China for reasons unknown, and then they flew him back to Beigao and just dropped him off right outside his house near a tree, and that was it. Now, of course, this final disappearance sounds the most absurd because what, he was flying on the backs of people to all these different cities? That doesn't make any sense. But when Huang was kind of aggressively questioned about this third story, because it sounded the most made up as compared to the other two, it would turn out Huang had all this kind of insider information about each of the 9 cities that he supposedly was flown to by these two men. He knew the weather in each of those cities on the night that he was gone. He knew what shows were playing on the night he was gone. And he also just had really specific descriptions of where he was in each of these cities when they got there that all checked out. Now, you got to remember that getting that information correct would have been really hard for Huang at the time. He did not have internet access. He didn't have a phone. He didn't have a car. I mean, he lives in an isolated small village in rural China. So the idea that literally the morning after all this happens, he's flown to these different cities, that he would have all this information perfectly correct, that's hard to do. That would be hard to lie about. As of today, no one has ever been able to debunk Huang's stories. Basically, there's enough legitimacy and verifiable information in his stories that you really can't discount them. They really could have happened. Add in the fact that Huang actually took a lie detector test and passed it, and suddenly you're looking at a story that, as crazy as it sounds, really could have happened. And so Huang's story today is considered far and away the most famous UFO story in China's history, because the leading theory here is that Huang must have been abducted by aliens, and that's how he was being moved around to all these places. And
one of the details I would have asked him is, he said they flew you in what? Helicopter? Plane? Something else?
Yeah, that's something that I would ask too. It's just like,
what did you get flown?
How did you fly? Where did you fly to? Like, or what? How did you fly from one place to the other? On their backs?
What kind of vehicle? Like, are you saying like the dudes could just fly? They just floated you on their backs into the air from city to city?
I don't know, man.
Showing up in each of these events were the extraterrestrials that had scooped him up. Nobody knows, but that is the theory. As for Huang, he wishes none of this had ever happened, because his disappearances and whatever happened to him basically wrecked his life. His fiance broke up with him because she was so uncomfortable around him, and there was a lot of stigma around Huang, especially in the village where everybody thought he was a liar. And then on top of that, all these news and film and TV crews came to the village because they wanted to shoot shows and documentaries about Huang, and Huang did not want anything to do with them. But again, like, all these people are coming to the village for Huang.
See, that's another thing too, is the real ones, like a lot of the fake ones, they'll like go out of their ways like, oh yeah, I interview me. I want to be interviewed and this and that. Him, hell no, he don't want to be interviewed. He doesn't want to relive it.
Yeah, he like doesn't want to acknowledge it happened. But damn.
Huang, and it's making the rest of the villagers upset. And then also there was a really lengthy investigation by the police and by the military to try to figure out how in the world Huang got into that army base. I mean, there were layers and layers of security that he somehow got through, and all those armed guards that were watching the gates said they never saw Huang walk through, even though Huang said he literally just walked through the gate with the two soldiers that were carrying him through. And so today, Huang actually still lives in Beigao, and he had a son and a daughter, and he has grandkids, but he refuses to talk about what happened to him because, again, it wrecked his life. So that's going to do it. If you enjoyed today's story, be sure to check out our podcast called the Mr. Ballin Podcast, which has hundreds of stories, a lot like this one, but many of them are only on the podcast. Again, it's called the Mr. Ballin Podcast, and it's available wherever you get your podcasts for free, or you can listen early and ad-free on Amazon Music. Wait, don't go anywhere. If you're looking for more strange, dark, and mysterious videos, click here.
There you go. That's pretty terrifying, dude. That's pretty nuts.
For sure.
I mean, I wouldn't know what to do. I literally would just be like, I don't know what the heck is going on here. I swear to you, I don't have any, there's nothing I have, I don't, how did I get here? There you go.
Yeah, if all that really happened, then I'd say that's pretty good proof that there's either aliens or something else.
Something. And that's what blows me away. It's just like, we don't know. We have no idea.
It's like the two dudes really gives it an aliens, like, you know, X-Files type vibe, you know?
Yes.
Over him just possibly having somehow teleported.
I mean, it does lend, like, the fact that, you know, he gives a description of two men who did that instead of him just being like, yeah, all of a sudden I was here.
Also,
and that was
you know what that makes me think?
What?
You know, people talk about the Men in Black, right?
Yeah.
And, like, we're always kind of assuming, oh, well, clearly that's, like, you know, government officials. Like, someone high up in our government that's, like, assigned to the job of, like, covering up alien stuff. Like, what if it's not? What if actually the Men in Black are just aliens covering up their own stuff that they're doing?
That's the thing. We don't know.
Exactly like those two guys, like, that came and got him. That's just the aliens covering up for the weirdness that they're causing.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's like, or, well, I don't know what they would be doing in in that case, like, what was their goal with any of that? Why put him in a military officer's office? Like, what is the logic?
I don't know.
Strange.
This was pretty good. This was really, like, interesting, and if there's some truth to it, then I would just I wager to think that this is nothing short of, like, the most, like, incontrovertible, like, news about the paranormal, whether it be aliens or ghosts or something else. I don't know, but this was great, and Mr. Ballin, thank you for sharing this with us, and thank you for always sharing the strange, dark, and mysterious, which he never disappoints with these. But anyway, that's gonna do it. So until next time, everyone, signing off. I'm Nate.
I'm Nick.
Y'all be good people. Take care. Bye-bye.